Yeah, and the booming voice. Okay. So we're now recording. I'd like to welcome everyone to our virtual talk shop where we are joined by guests from Home Movie Day. Brian Bielek and Megan Needles are here to talk to us about Home Movie Day and its some of its genesis and where it's going and how they are working with this year. So I'm going to toss it over to them. Take it away. And thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, great. I can get started. So, yeah, thank you all for joining, and I'm excited to talk about Home Movie Day. I love this event. I've been helping out with Home Movie Days for several years now, and this year turned out to be quite a challenge to figure out how we were going to adjust what's normal about Home Movie Day. So I wanted to start though by just saying kind of what is Home Movie Day? What is this basic event? And it's been going on. Home Movie Day has been going on since 2003, and it's largely overseen now by an organization called the Center for Home Movies. And they help places around the world really organize events around this one day a year in October, which is called Home Movie Day. And this year it's October 17th, which lined up nicely with the Archives Bazaar. And the idea is to create an event that celebrates home movies, celebrates amateur film, can kind of bring everyone together around that topic. And yeah, I mean, I have this quote up from John Waters that I think kind of encapsulates a little bit of what we're going for. Scary, joyous, a little bit flawed, kind of amazing, all those things all at once. So like I said, it's been going on since 2003. So there's kind of a typical Home Movie Day event. That's where the in-person event in a physical space, archivists and volunteers for the city, the location it's happening, set up in one area and provide a place where anyone can bring in home movies, anyone can bring in their amateur film and talk about them, look at them, inspect them, and ultimately project them so everyone can see them and talk about the films. And I have a picture here of kind of what an inspection table looks like at one of these events. This is actually from an event at the Academy in 2017, I believe. So you can kind of see the way that someone who might not know what their film looks like or what to do with it can bring it in, and we have everything there. We have the equipment, the splicers, the rewinds, things like that. Typically, Home Movie Day tends to focus on analog films. So these are all this is all the leader and supplies for 8mm film. Typically also do Super 8, 16mm, sometimes stranger film gauges. That's the basic format, but Home Movie Day has no rules. It can be anything that is home media, videotape, sometimes if you have the ability to show it. I've been to Home Movie Days where they've started incorporating some more digital media. I mean, if you think about what is a home movie in 2020, it's something you shot on your smartphone. And yeah, I went to one in New York a couple years ago where they were showing smartphone videos. I thought that was really amazing and possibly the future for this event. So when we're putting this together, I mean, why? What are the goals of this event? And as I kind of already mentioned, it's to talk to people about their home movies, kind of explain maybe what they are. Sometimes people don't know what these little yellow Kodak boxes are that they might have inherited from a grandparent or something like that. Sometimes they've never seen them. If they inherited them, they don't know what's on them. They might not know how can they see it, how can they digitize it so they can share it with other people in the future. And ultimately, we're talking about home movies as valuable historical records. So then when someone brings in a home movie, you could say, this is great, this is beautiful, this shows Los Angeles in 1960. Here's an archive that would love to have it and love to preserve it. So Home Movie Day is a way for anyone to be connected with that larger ecosystem and understand that these are important materials, these are historical records, and they can be preserved. It's not just something to lose or throw away with time. And then finally, I mean, I think one of the most important things about Home Movie Day is that it's a lot of fun. Like, I really enjoy setting up in these events once a year and talking with people and watching them. I mean, home movies can have really fun moments. They can be really beautiful. We typically set up a game called Home Movie Day Bingo, where we hand out bingo sheets, and it's laden with all the basic tropes you might see in a home movie. Oh, it's a grandparent, it's a dog running around, and um, you ask for that audience participation to identify things, to mark down their Home Movie Day bingo card, and we'll get prizes together. So there's actually something you can get out of this, and just in general, celebrate Home Movie Day. Um, so then, yeah, past Home Movie Day events.
Okay, so I will talk a little bit about previous Home Movie Day events in Los Angeles. So there is a long history of Home Movie Day in LA, and there have been LA Home Movie Day events for as long as Home Movie Day has existed. So that's since 2003, and nearly 20 years, which is very impressive. And this slide shows some of the different venues where previous Home Movie Day events have taken place. So there's the Echo Park Film Center, the Mamie Clayton Library and Museum, Los Angeles Public Library, and the Academy, to name just a few. And I think it's worth taking a moment to just acknowledge the significance that physical space plays in a community event such as Home Movie Day. As you can see, Home Movie Day is often held in these cherished community spaces that often support the arts or preserving regional history. And these are spaces that are meant to be accessible and are often within a certain community or neighborhood. And it provides a place for friends and colleagues and strangers to come together and share their memories, to teach each other, and to celebrate their regional history and amateur filmmaking. Also, one of the goals, I think, of Home Movie Day is, as Brian said, to set aside a day where you can appreciate home movies and view them in a way and in an environment similar to how they were originally enjoyed, which is in a living room with your friends and family in the dark, kind of huddled around a small bright screen. And I think often Home Movie Day organizers have that in mind. Trying to recreate this intimate, friendly, casual space to celebrate amateur film and home movies. So all this is just to say that the space where Home Movie Day is held definitely is a big part of it, and it really contributes to that feeling, that intimate feeling. So in addition to the venues on the previous slide, Home Movie Day events have been held in Los Angeles at the Archives Bazaar. These photos are from the 2019 Archives Bazaar. And there was also a Home Movie Day event held at the Archives Bazaar in 2017. And in 2017, Kate Dollenmeyer put together a curated program with submissions from local archives and cultural institutions. And at that, part of that program allowed archivists to present the films that they were sharing and talk about kind of the collections that they're from and maybe any information on the preservation of those films. Because we're in Los Angeles, which has an abundance of film archives and archivists, we sometimes have access to some pretty cool home movies to showcase at Home Movie Day. For example, last year, in 2019, we debuted an anonymous 16mm anamorphic widescreen home movie of Disneyland in 1958, which had recently been collected by the Academy Film Archive. And these are some more photos of the 2019 event last year. The Academy Film Archive, and specifically, some of the archivists that work there are often involved in organizing Home Movie Day, and they'll provide equipment and volunteers and sometimes even space. And again, because there's so many wonderful moving image archivists in LA, there is a strong pool of regular volunteers who come back and support Home Movie Day year after year. In addition, the UCLA Media Archival Studies MLIS program is in the neighborhood, and that also provides a pool of student volunteers. And for example, Brian and I are both part of the master's program there now.
So that's kind of an idea of what Home Movie Day typically is, but as we all know, this year is not a typical year. So we've had to do a lot of work to adjust it to the virtual event. So I was going to just give a brief idea of kind of our timeline and how we've developed where we've landed eventually, and kind of talk through the ideas we had, places we chose not to go, places we chose to go. So basically, we started talking in April or May about this year, kind of what are we going to do for Home Movie Day? Because I mean, at this time last year, it was pretty set in stone. We're just going to do it again. We have all the equipment. We know what it looks like. Come this spring, we did not know what it was going to look like. And we knew, though, that we ultimately wanted to keep the mixture of a film screening, public participation. We liked that when you just open it up for anyone to bring their home movies, there's a bit of spontaneity. You never know what's going to come in, and usually it's amazing. We wanted to keep all of that together. So our first thought was just, well, could we do that, but in a safe, socially distanced way? We talked about just an outdoor screening, just do the exact same setup, same equipment, same projectors, but do it outside. One idea was even, well, what if we worked with a drive-in movie theater? I know those are getting very popular these days, so could we do a drive-in home movie day? What could that look like? These were all floating around, but I mean, it was really hard at that point to just understand, well, where are we going to be in October back in the spring? And we thought about it more, and we just kind of thought, we don't know. I mean, that uncertainty is just so high. And especially coming to June and July, we saw COVID-19 cases surge, and kind of the situation only seemed to be getting worse. So we decided the really safest thing to do would be to set up a virtual event. That we just had to do that. But we still wanted to kind of get all those aspects I talked about before. So we thought about, as Megan mentioned, that previously we'd done some screenings working with other archives in Los Angeles. So that seems like an easy way to just ensure that we have material to show in a stream. You know, we can get this digital material, it's already out there. And then we started looking at, well, what are other virtual events that are happening, and maybe what can we model from those? So in the spring, a conference called the Orphan Film Symposium was supposed to happen in person. And they were, I think, at least from what I was looking at, they were one of the first to really adjust to a completely online format. So this happened in May. And the new Orphans Online was still, they presented orphan films. I guess I should explain, orphan films can be another term for these kinds of home movies, amateur films that we're talking about, because they're not as cared for as more institutional material, so they're orphaned. So the Orphans Online, they showed these films. They had some pre-recorded presentations by archivists that had been planning to present, but they still had a host that was live switching between the pre-recorded content and just talking to the audience like I am now. And we thought that could be an interesting model. And I know Megan's going to get more into the streaming infrastructure, but actually talking with the people that put on Orphans Online has proven to be really helpful as we think about what we're going to do. Also, we were looking at some of the events online that Mark Toscano, who's a film preservationist at the Academy Film Archive, he's been hosting on Instagram live streams of films that he just projects in his home. And he kind of, as I understand it, he points the camera at where the screen he's projecting onto, and that's the stream. And so we thought, okay, well, yeah, with Home Movie Day, we typically project films. Could we just do that? Would that work? And then actually most recently, just this past Saturday, the first virtual Home Movie Day happened in Raleigh. That was hosted by Skip Alzheimer, who is of AV Geeks. And that was very, very interesting to watch them figure out a lot of the same things we're trying to do, a lot of the same showing digitized films, providing live commentary, providing a host. So Skip's been doing streaming online for a long time. So in general, he's been a good model as well. And as we thought about all of these ideas, we ultimately decided that digitizing films ahead of time was going to be the easiest. Just if we tried to project in one home and stream it, that adds an extra layer of logistics. There's all these things. And even just balancing the kind of stream we want to do all digitally is going to be a problem enough. But that introduced yet another wrinkle. So as Megan mentioned, we have a lot of regular volunteers, and kind of the equipment needed to run Home Movie Day has become very standard. A lot of people have projectors, film rewinds, splicers, things like that, because I mean, Home Movie Day is about the home movies that we all had at home. So you use the equipment that you have at home to show them. It's actually relatively straightforward. But film digitizing equipment, film scanners, that's not really that common to have in your house. And just as we are all continuing to work from home, it became an issue of, okay, but all these people that normally can use film scanners at work, they can't right now. We asked around a lot, and eventually, and I think this is actually working out great, we got in touch with Pro 8mm, a company in town who do like film processing and film digitization. And talking with them, it actually became very simple that in the past, as one of these prizes for Home Movie Day bingo, or as a raffle prize or something like that, they've often donated scanning certificates as prizes. So people can win them and then bring their films and digitize them. So in talking with them, it became really easy to think of, okay, that's the same donation, but let's do it beforehand. Let's just collect films and digitize them beforehand. And that's where we're going. So we have submissions right now. We talked about, well, if it's all going to go to Pro 8mm, could people bring them directly there? Could they mail them to Pro 8mm? I mean, that's the safest distanced way. That would also save us some of these logistical steps as we figure out where are all of our volunteers going to come into play. But as we thought about that, we really thought that we'd want to collect them ourselves and have a chance to look through what we have. So we've set up a system where we have one volunteer who is collecting submissions around LA County, and we have another volunteer who has that equipment at their house, and they're looking through it before it goes to Pro 8mm. And this also allows us to personally connect with each person providing a film, and we can have those same conversations that we would have had on Home Movie Day about what do they know about their film? Have they seen it before? Here's what they can do to take care of it into the future. And we can establish that direct interaction that we otherwise would have, or potentially will lose in the virtual space. And then finally, as we thought about it, if we're all going digital anyways, this opens up even another avenue where we can just collect material that's already digitized. So we have those submissions open as well right now. So we can take films that have already been digitized. We can also be a little bit more inclusive. We can include videotape that has been digitized in a way that we don't actually need the playback equipment in the same way as we would have in the virtual space. And also opening up to digital submissions helps us, again, make sure that we can actually hit the total runtime. I mean, Home Movie Day is typically an entire day. We've condensed that down to 3 hours for our live stream, but that's still going to be a lot of material to show. So in the event that we don't get enough physical submissions, maybe it's more likely we'll get more digital submissions. And at this point, I'll just say we are still accepting submissions. I know we're getting a little close to these deadlines I have up here, but if anyone out there has 8mm, Super 8, or 16 that they'd be interested in including in our stream, that we can still talk about it for a few more days and we have enough time to digitize it before the 17th. And if you have any digital materials, digitized film, digitized tape, we're also accepting that through the end of this month. So if you have anything, or if you know of anyone who has anything, please put us in touch and it'll be great.
Okay, and then I will also just touch on the curated program, which we decided to organize as part of this year's program as well. And so, yeah, we wanted to partner with local archives and cultural institutions to put together a curated program of home movies, very much similar to what Kate Dollenmeyer did in 2017. And we wanted to do this for several reasons. One, it makes space for home movies coming from marginalized communities. which might otherwise not be screened at Home Movie Day, but are an important part of regional history. It's also an educational opportunity where local archivists can discuss a home movie, the collection it came from, and some information about its preservation. So it's not only an educational opportunity for the general public to learn a little bit about the work that archivists do, but also for archivists to learn from each other. And lastly, as Brian kind of touched on earlier, it provides some structure in the 3-hour program as we wait for submissions to come in from the general public. And I just want to touch on a challenge that has arisen with putting together the curated program, and that is that you know, a lot of archivists right now have limited access to their collections, to their digitization equipment, to their servers and hard drives and whatnot. So it's definitely limited, you know, what films folks could submit to the curated program. I'm going to go into some more challenges that we had to work through in organizing the event this year. And the first one I'll touch on has to do with soliciting submissions with this adjusted timeline. So typically we don't ask for much involvement from the public the day before the event. We do publicity, you know, ahead of time to let folks know when and where to bring their films, but that's basically all we need from the public, is to just kind of show up with their home movies. However, since we'll be digitizing films in order to accommodate community submissions in a virtual event, we need to ensure that we collect the films several weeks in advance so that we have enough time to prepare them for streaming. So this shifts publicity priorities earlier to allow for time for people to learn about the event, to find their home movies, to decide to submit them, and then also for our volunteers to collect them, inspect them, and have them digitized. And this has been a little bit of a challenge because we got a bit of a late start due to the pandemic and all of the uncertainty surrounding organizing this event in the early months. And so I think if we could go back again and do it again, we'd probably try to start publicity like at least a month earlier, if not more. Another challenge that has arisen has to do with building this 3-hour program. Home Movie Day events often have a casual community feel about them, and dead time, or time when there's nothing being screened, is fine and it's almost expected. You know, archivists are threading the projector for the next film to be screened, and volunteers are inspecting the films. So there's inevitably going to be some time when there's nothing being screened, and that's okay. As Brian said, they're day-long events, but it's okay if there's nothing being screened because you know, if there's other people in the room, you can talk to folks, you can watch people thread the projector or watch people inspect the films. So dead time is okay. But in the virtual streaming event, not having something on the screen can imply that there's a tech issue or that the event is over. And so we felt like we had to have a much more regimented and like planned out 3-hour program for that reason. And that's been a bit of a challenge because, you know, we don't know what we're going to get from the public until a few weeks before the event. So there's some uncertainty that we have to wade through until we get really a couple weeks from now. So I think the key with this is flexibility and having alternate material to program kind of on deck in case we need to fill in some gaps. And some example of alternate content could be educational content. So videos about film inspection and film handling, about projectors and other film equipment, and also obscure film and media formats. And the last challenge I will touch on has to do with the technology and streaming infrastructure. So in planning this virtual event, the big question is like, how do we emulate all of the various components of Home Movie Day, which are tried and true, and make it such a fun and effective event into this virtual space? And I have those kind of components here on the slide. And as Brian mentioned, we've had to do a lot of research and experimenting to gauge what is possible with the resources that we have. We are all volunteers and we don't have institutional backing. So we really need to be able to do this with essentially no budget and with limited hardware and software. And luckily, there are folks who have experience putting on streaming events and who have been very generous with their knowledge. And we have definitely been in touch with some of those people. But because of all these different components, our virtual event is a little unique. It's a little more complicated than some other events. So we've had to do some experimenting for sure. So we did narrow down the elements that we would need in our tech setup to what's here on the slide. So one, we needed the ability to stream video, such as home movies and educational content. We needed a video conferencing or audio call-in element for live commentary. We needed a live chat box for audience participation. And we also wanted as accessible as a platform as possible. So I put together this table here to show just some of the streaming platforms that we're experimenting with and some of the considerations that we've had to keep in mind for each. So questions like, is there a chat box? Is an account needed to participate in the chat? What is the cost of the platform? What is the video quality? And is there live captioning built into the platform, or do you need some kind of a third-party platform instead? So we're still in the process of experimenting with what's available to us. We're likely going to use some combination of Zoom and one of these other platforms. And we're also working with a software called OBS, which I'm happy to talk a little bit more about if folks are interested. But with that, I will conclude our presentation. And yeah, just remind folks that we are still accepting submissions. So please feel free to do that in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Brian. That was fantastic. I've learned a lot now too. So I'm going to open it up to questions here. And we have a first question in the chat from Howard at the Marina Del Rey Historical Society asking, have you worked on Instagram?
So yeah, Instagram is not actually one I think we've really talked about much. I know I mentioned it before because that's what Mark Toscano is using to stream. Yeah, I guess I had always pictured that it would take place, our home movie day would take place on a kind of desktop or a laptop computer, because that's, it's what I'm more used to, I guess. And yeah, I mean, Instagram's an interesting idea. I don't know if Megan, you have any thoughts on that.
I think that, and I definitely like log into the Remains to be streams all the time. But I think that, yeah, because of how small of screen Instagram, even if you log into Instagram on your desktop, you still have a pretty small image. I think it's something that I didn't really think of for this event. That's not to say it's not a good event for other things. And it's certainly, I mean, a lot of people have Instagram and it's really easy and accessible platform for a lot of folks. But I think just that the scale of the image was probably something that deterred us for this event.
I understand that. Another question in the chat comes from Mel Granger at the Aliso Street Historical Society, and his question is, effects of utilizing AI video encoding software on film stock, open source image transfer AI software suggestions for archiving moving pictures from film or any analog source. I don't know, Mel, if you want to chime in and clarify or make sure that I'm asking your question the way you intended.
Well, I can once I unmute. I just wanted to know if there was open source software to do this kind of transfer at home. I can't afford, some, high dollar brand name AI encoding software. And I just thought maybe since you guys are a nonprofit, it sounds like, you probably run into the same issue.
Yeah, I mean, for doing home transfers, I know it's definitely an issue with all of the tech needed. Um, I mean, one thing that's interesting about film is it's a series of single frame photographs. So I've seen people working on different scanners or different kind of open source hacks to just, the issue being to advance the film in a sequential way where you then just take a picture of every new photograph. I don't know of any out there that are kind of really easy to use and set up, but I mean, if you poked around a lot online, I mean, there are some interesting experiments happening, definitely.
And then actually, Mel, your next question was, does the movie have to be historical?
I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at when I was talking about, is the future of home movie day digital smartphone videos or something like that. So, I mean, at this point, we've been talking about, historical movies because we've been focusing on those analog formats that, I mean, I think some enthusiasts are still using 8mm. I know I've shot some 8mm recently, but just by nature of the format, the film is typically older that we're working with.
Thanks again.
Okay. Phyllis had asked the question about only having until September 20th to submit. Kate answered in the chat, but I just want to call it out. It says, will someone still pick up analog submissions to be transferred? And Kate did reply that until September 20th for analog film. And yes, someone will pick it up, and you have until September 30th for already digitized submissions. So there's still time.
Yeah, and I'll just say on that really quick. I mean, that's definitely, as Megan was talking about, one of our challenges with the timeline, because yeah, I mean, that feels really soon and it's several weeks before the actual event. But that's one of the things that we have to deal with when we're working with another company like Pro 8mm. So they've been really generous, and I'm sure I've seen their scans of other films, and I know they're going to look beautiful, but they have their own scanning timeline. They have their own queue of things to work with. So we really need to just get it to them as soon as we can in order to get it back in time. And yeah, I think if we were doing it ourselves, we might be able to do it a little closer to October 17th.
Have another question in the chat from Shelly where she asks about digitizing from VHS cassette. I know Pro 8mm was what, 8/16 specifically. Maybe do you know of anyone who would digitize from VHS?
I mean, there are certainly places in Los Angeles. I don't know, Megan, if you know of any places off the top of your head. I think you're on mute.
Megan, you're still muted. I'm trying to unmute you. Oh yeah. There's a note that UCLA IS used to do as a learning workshop in the IS lab over there. And another, Shelly says, she thinks, SM Video can do it. Maybe. I know, oddly enough, I got a VHS-C digitized a couple of years ago through Costco. you drop it off there and then they have a third party vendor. I'm not sure who the vendor is off the top of my head. This was quite a while ago, so maybe it's even changed since then.
I'll just say real quick, actually, I wanted to update that it seems like Megan's computer froze. So hopefully she'll be back soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I can just chime in too. I mean, this is a weird one because VHS is a lot of, some people, it's for the archives, we're kind of in an awkward moment because of the pandemic, because we can often digitize VHS, in our own archives. And some people even have setups at home, but I'm not used to using vendors for VHS digitization for home movies. So I don't have any at my fingertips, but yeah, someone put in the chat the memory lab at the Central Library, and that's a great resource.
I also wanted to comment on talking about the UCLA IS department. I mean, that's actually something that Megan and I feel, especially that's an issue this year because we are students and ordinarily I think we'd be able to use that equipment. So that's an example, as I mentioned before, of in this work from home environment, we can't use it.
Yeah, and I was actually going to mention the memory lab at the Central Library too, but I don't know what the access is for that right now either, if it's limited or, well, I don't know if they're even doing it at all. It's a tough time to try and sort some of that out, especially for how to do it yourself. So I guess I have questions maybe about some of the content that you've gotten in the past, because we had talked briefly before we started the talk shop, but I've only been able to poke my head in. Oh, Megan's back. Poke my head in last year at the Archives Bazaar. And we did do a poll on Twitter. Was that yesterday? I'm sorry, I don't remember what day it was. My days are blurring together. I'm sure you all are experiencing this too. Where we did a poll, but here, I can actually, you know what, let me share my screen because I had it up because I wanted to make sure to talk about it. So this was our poll. And overwhelmingly, the retro fashion was the most, the favorite thing. Followed by famous sites and goofing for the camera. Yeah, I mean, so I just wanted to maybe talk about some of what your favorites have been, maybe some of what you've seen submitted in the past. What are some things that maybe were a little bit questionable? Like, can you share some on that?
I mean, I think it's really funny to see holiday celebrations so low because those are some of the most common home movies that you find, because that's when people would bring out the camera, Christmas or birthday or 4th of July, just any of those are everywhere in home movie collections.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. Sorry about that. I think, it's so common in home movies. People are filming their everyday lives or, celebrations and a lot of birthdays and Christmas and backyard barbecues and stuff. And so I think it's really special when people decided to take their home movie out into the world and film their city or some place that they went to, or maybe some historical event. And that's when it can become really exciting. And, the value of home movies as these historical records really kind of shines through at those moments, I think. One of my favorite home movies that I found in an archive a couple of years ago was from the 50s, and it was a room full of women, no men in sight, and they were celebrating someone's birthday or a party, but they were just letting loose and, flirting with each other and, blowing out birthday candles and whatnot. And it was just this, beautiful kind kind of record of these women sharing this private space together. And I think it was just amazing that it wound up in an archive somewhere. And I felt very lucky to be able to lay eyes on it. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a question in the chat. What is the cutoff date for these home movies in terms of historical date? And asking, are you accepting contemporary digital movies as well?
I mean, at this point, I think we are still thinking, even for the digital submissions, anything that originated on a physical format is kind of where our head is for that. So, I mean, that can still be up until now if you're still using some of these physical formats. But I mean, that includes like film or videotape, and videotape can still be digital videotape, but we're just kind of interested in that aspect of things for now. I mean, again, I think it will be a really interesting thing to see Home Movie Day, especially in the digital space, progress into the future.
Oh, Phyllis, yeah. Phyllis mentions in the chat that the eval had the retro fashion show footage last year, and they would love to bring more if they can get access to the analog footage. Yeah, that's like the thing is, can you get the access? I would love to see that. Any other questions? So I guess the question I had, I did make a note about asking more about OBS, you know, because I'm very interested in the technical side of how you guys are looking at this, and maybe also how Raleigh handled their home movie day. How did all that play out?
Do you want to talk about OBS, Megan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so OBS is this kind of the software that enables you to stream content and layer content. So maybe you have, you know, your webcam in the corner. It's a webcam in the corner and like a video full screen, and you have your logo in another corner. So it lets you have that kind of design capabilities, and then stream out to different platforms such as like Facebook or YouTube, or what else is there? Twitch and Vimeo, for example. And, you know, I'll be honest, I'm still a newbie when I'm in terms of OBS, and I'm very much experimenting and learning as I go. But I think it is free. So if you're interested in, you know, playing around with it, or you're considering putting on your own virtual event, definitely worth downloading it and playing around with it. There's a lot of great tutorials online that I've used to learn. And I think it is very commonly used in putting together these streaming events. And yeah, Kate, I think, just noted in the chat that you can, in terms of the Raleigh home movie event, it is recorded. And so you can watch that at the Center for Home Movies website. And it's also on the AV Geeks Facebook page as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I will definitely be checking out Raleigh.
Yeah.
Home Movie Day. Anuja asked a question. Can you talk about how you would be collecting, like, about how collection analog films that people might want to contribute? So do you mean from archival collections, Anuja, or like?
Sorry, actually, I meant collecting analog film.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, so for the event, so if you follow the link that Kate just put in the chat, and you fill out the information about the analog film that you want to submit, That'll automatically ping one of our volunteers who can reach out to you and coordinate some time to pick it up from you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see. Does anyone else have any questions for Brian and Megan? We have about 10 minutes left. Okay, it's quiet so far. So I guess maybe another question that I had would actually, well, it's actually what I thought maybe Anuja was asking, but when you're working with archives and getting collection items from them, is it just as varied as when you're getting it from public submissions in terms of the types of materials that you're getting?
Yeah, I can answer that one since I've been working on that. I would say, yeah, it has been pretty varied, and we have, you know, partly because there's this issue with access to the physical collections right now. I think we've wanted to open up kind of the type of film that folks can submit. It doesn't need to be like what you would imagine as your classic home movie shot on 8mm or whatever. It can be, we just wanted things that were, you know, amateur and that were really representative of the community or the archive, the community that the archive serves. So we've definitely gotten, you know, more like community events, and in addition to like a more traditional home movie style.
Thank you. There is a question about how did the modern 8mm film that you shot look? That's a good question.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up, I have it on YouTube. I'm happy to share with people, but mine probably isn't the best representation of what modern 8 can look like, because I got a little experimental with my film processing. I did it by myself as opposed to sending it to a lab, and I used a coffee-based formula. So it comes out, it's a little brown, it's kind of rough around the edges, there's a lot going on. I think it looks pretty cool. I'm happy with it, but it's definitely not the same kind of quality that, I mean, you can see things today that are shot on Super 8 or 16. There's a lot of new material being made. If you follow Pro 8mm social media, they're frequently posting some of it. It looks great. They sell Super 8 for anyone interested in working in that medium now. But yeah, I can put a link in to my video if anyone wants to look at it.
I do. It sounds fascinating. And I never would have thought about like a coffee-based solution and how it would color the film. It all makes sense when I say it out loud. It's like, oh yeah, okay. Still, please, yeah.
Yeah.
And Kate also put a preview of Home Movie Day Bingo into the chat, and I'm totally gonna check that out too. I also like the name of the website. Bingo Baker is pretty great.
Yeah, I don't know if it was mentioned before, but just in case it wasn't, Kate is a member of the board for the Center for Home Movies. So just in general with Los Angeles Home Movie Day, as well as Center for Home Movies, she has been extremely helpful with this event, and we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now without her. So I wanted to specifically call that out and say thank you to Kate.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I want to say thank you to you all as well for being so game for our social media experiment and for coming and doing this talk shop with us and spending some time and sharing your process and you know, we're all in this together in terms of figuring out how to put an event like this on. And it's getting bigger all the time. And so we here at LAist Subject are absolutely thrilled to have you on board and involved in our virtual adventure, our experiment, as Lisa calls it.
Yeah, no, we're really excited too. I think what just all of these kind of virtual events has shown me is that it really is a community effort to put these things together. And I've been connected with people that I wouldn't have been connected with before, just to talk about what worked for them, what didn't work for them. And it's been a really nice collaboration just across the board.
Yeah, and I agree that I think it's great that we are experimenting and working through all this right now, because I think we were talking a little bit before the presentation started, but this can impact how future events are put together, and the accessibility of them. The potential of that is really exciting. So.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see where things go, especially after this year. There's so much ad hoc innovation that is going to lead to, I think, even better access. So it's pretty great. Checking to see if there's any other questions. Oh, Mal and Kate are fully chatting, and this is great because he was going to shoot some 8mm black and white and submit. But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, if you have coffee, if you have a camera and film and some coffee, as Brian mentioned, I think we could still get in under the wire, right? Or tea, yeah, tea, all kinds of things.
If anyone's interested in talking about processing, you can feel free to email me. It's just my name, brianbielak@gmail.com.
All right, and with that, are there any last questions before we wrap this up? If not, I'm going to go ahead and I want to say a big thank you to Brian and Megan for joining us and for sharing so much of their knowledge, information, and the history of Home Movie Day, which like I said, up until the last couple of years, it was one of those things that was on the periphery for me. And so it's really exciting to get sort of a behind the scenes look and to get to know you all and your process and to be doing this together. So thank you again so much for joining us. And thank you everyone for coming and hanging out for the last hour. And this has been really great. We are still working on our topic for next week's talk shop. If you have any suggestions or anything you want to talk about, we're hoping to keep it Archives Bazaar related. Just shoot me an email, let me know. And we'll see everyone next time. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.